Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the new Psycho's Platters episode 130, which I'm going to title 45's Part 3, Cheap Trick and Other Miscellaneous. I've got, I want to say, you know what, when I make mistakes, I'll admit them. We're back here in the Care Bear room again. Some people are like, Care Bear curtains? Yes, they're collectible. They're not my curtains, but they're curtains. Curtains for you, say. Yeah. So, anywho, I went off and I mentioned in the last episode that that I discovered a whole bunch more 45s. Okay, fine. I still have them, but the reason why you haven't seen any videos lately in the living room where I have my stereo equipment, you don't want to. My boys, they play their computer games, they play their video games, they play all kinds of things in there, and my records, my vinyl is in bookcases and various riffraff in a corner, and I couldn't find the batch again. So this is just going to be maybe a shorter episode. But I still have 45s to show you. So we're going to start off here. Yes, I wrote down some things. Not too much this time, because I've only got a handful to show you up for part 3. We start off with, this is still from the 25-cent finds that I had from a few weeks back, okay? We start off with, on Coed Records, 1958, Trouble in Paradise. Now, the Crest, this was a top 40 hit. The Crest started in 1957. They were founded by J.T. Carter. Their main members, though, at least in the beginning, was a guy by the name of Johnny Mastrangelo, which, of course, he cut his name down to Johnny Maestro. Yeah, does that name sound familiar to you? Probably should. He was the main man of the Crests, the main singer, at least until 1961 when he went solo and had Johnny Maestro in the Crests, but that wasn't the Crests. There was a different background singers, and so that makes things a little confusing, doesn't it? But so he was one of the main members, and so was a lady by the name of Patricia Vandross. She ends up only on the first 245s on Joyce Records, which I've never seen that label. But does that Patricia Vandross sound familiar, possibly? Yeah, maybe, maybe not. She turns out to be the sister of future R&B star Luther Vandross. Yeah, she started out in the Crests, but by 1958 she left. But as far as for the band is concerned, the Crest kept going, actually, though, when all the other members started falling by the wayside by the mid-1960s. But they kept going with JT until 1978. He tried again in 1980, and he kept the name going until the late 90s, when he finally sold the name to his vocalist at the time. JT actually is the only surviving member left. Everyone else has passed away from the 80s on up. So I like the Crest. 16 Candles was one of my favorites. But like I said, top 40 hit, 1958, Trouble in Paradise. Next one here to go from that to on Argo, Just My Baby and Me, Clarence Frogman Henry. I've seen a couple different ones. I found a couple different ones on Argo, distributed by Chess Records, of course. 1960, this came out. He was from New Orleans. Fats Domino and Professor Longhair were his influences. He actually opened up 18 concerts on the Beatles' 1964 tour across U.S. and Canada. He's still alive. He's still alive at age 79. And I heard he does shows from time to time. To go from a frogman to frogmen on Candix, March of 1961, Underwater is the name of this one. I tried to dig up some information on these guys. I like the whole Candix label personally, but basically the reason why the label is actually a little bit more well known has nothing really to do with the Frogmen, although, you know, it was a regional hit, I guess, and maybe a small-time national hit. But the Beach Boys, 8 months later, in November of '61, would cut the Surfin' single. But back to Frogmen for a second. All I could figure out from these guys, I had to go through another website here. It was a 4-piece band from Culver City, California, who became the Frogmen for this and one other single released later in the year in '61. The Candix label, though, was folded. It went under by summer of '62. So I don't really have much more information on this. At least as of a couple years ago, 2 of the original 4 members were still alive, so I thought that was kind of cool. Also, if I remember correctly, in April of '61, they did do an American Bandstand appearance for Dick Clark. Lastly, I think I told you guys way back in episode 1, part 1 of this, that I did find at least a Beatles 45 because, well, Dougie got the rest. You know, I'm not going to pass up any Beatle 45s for a quarter, especially when it's Can't Buy Me Love. I may have this in my collection. I don't really honestly remember, but I'll tell you about this one, though. Beatle fan or not, I'll mention this to you. This came out in mid-March 1964. It was recorded January 29th, though, at EMI Studios in Paris. They were doing, what was it, 18 nights? I don't know if I'm getting that right. At the Olympia Theater in Paris. Something tells me that's way too many shows. But that's how they were able to get this recorded really quickly. The demand from EMI, though, came for a quick follow-up due to the success of I Want to Hold Your Hand. Therefore, the readiness, the speediness of having to get a hit cut, and that's why Can't Buy Me Love was recorded there. Trivia-wise, believe it or not, Can't Buy Me Love is the only English-language Beatle track that was recorded in a studio outside of England. Full track, I'm talking. Now, some people may remember that The Inner Light, which was the flip side, the B-side to the 1968 single Lady Madonna, parts of the backing track were recorded in India. But, like I said, this was the only song in the catalog that was recorded outside of England. Let's shift for 2 seconds. We're still going to stay in a Beatle mode. I could not believe my luck when I happened to go to one of my local haunts here. And I picked this up for $1. I almost missed this. I'm like, what is this pile? Why am I saying pile? Because there was a bunch of these. This was put out in 2014. I don't know much about this. I'll like I said, this is this is the front, this is the back. This is the CD, and it says, of course, on the front, new improved full-dimensional stereo. But when I saw it was this, for $1, I could not pass this up. These were all still sealed, but I opened them anyway, opened one up. And, of course, let me see here. It came in a nice plastic sleeve, at least. Now, on here, though, it says mono/stereo. The Beatles Yesterday and Today, copying the old mid-60s Capitol label on here. What also gave me a little bit of a kick is they also had the little, like a little copy of the original inner sleeve you would have found that says Capitol 66. Sounds great. I bought a couple of these. I gave one to Doug Fields, because I knew he'd get a kick out of it. I saved one for Kathy Emmer, if she's watching this. Yeah, you get this too. You get a copy of this. But I have a feeling, I think I'm going to get a couple more. Why? I'm thinking when I get to 250 subs, we're going to have a contest. And 1 or 2 of these, if I can grab them, will end up being a prize. Would you like that? Would you like one of these as a prize in the contest? I think you guys would. I don't, like I said, other than the 2014, it does have the Apple logo on the bottom of this, and only this little barcode was on here originally, and this was pasted under the shrink. So I have no clue. Can anybody tell me about this particular one? I really would like to know, honestly. Alright, also real quick before I get to the other topic, I did find literally yesterday at a Goodwill in the next town over a signed book, Pride, the Charlie Pride story. First, how do I explain this? First black mainstream country western singer. Yes, there was other black country singers before this, there was, but mainstream big hits. Yeah, I know this one was personalized. I don't care. I can't quite figure out what the personalization is, but it says dated June 24th, 1995. So I was kind of happy to get this. I can't wait to read it. I actually knew the existence of this book. I came across a signed copy in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, but I didn't have any money at the time. So for $1, I was not going to pass that up. Also in that pile, go figure, it took me 9 years to find this. I did find a genuine autographed Bill Clinton's My Life. He did 2 book signings in my area back in 2004 for that book when it came out. And I said, one of these days, somebody was going to slip up and put it out. Sure enough. I don't know. I'm blessed to be able to figure out who was in the neighborhood when they do these book signings. And eventually, I will post another episode of As the Bookworm Turns, which is my book videos that I do. I haven't done one in a while, and I'm sorry, but I will be doing another one real soon. So, long-winded that I am, back to Cheap Trick, like I said, I was bringing them up. The whole Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing this year, a lot of the bands had some drama attached, didn't it? NWA, I'm sorry, I like NWA, I do, but they're not rock. They're not rock. They're rap, okay? Make a rap Hall of Fame and stick them in there. They belong there. They do. It's rap music. I have nothing against rap music. Make a rap music Hall of Fame. They should be up there. Just throwing that out there. Steve Miller? Yeah, he deserved it. I also liked what he said after he accepted the award. Because what he said was right. I'm not going to go into all of it. He basically went off and said, you know, fat cat political. Yeah, that is what it is. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a fat cat political. It should be run by fans, not the bands. You know what I'm saying? So Steve Miller, dead on in his point. Deep Purple, yes, they deserve to be in there way long time ago. But the whole don't allow Richie Blackmore in the building philosophy, I'm like, what? Let's think about this. If you're a Purple head, you know that from the beginning of that band, you know, I mean, let's face it, from what was it, late 67, early 68 they started. They were supposed to have one of the Searchers was supposed to be a member of that band too, but it was a real weird story. But, I mean, let's face it, even though Rod Evans and Nick Simper were only on the first 3, you still had the core of Blackmore, John Lord, and Ian Pace, right? And they went all the way through to, well, until Blackmore left, which was, what, about late 73, early 74? You know, I mean, but he's the damn principal sound of that band. Whether you like him or not is immaterial. He should have been there. Now, I keep hearing whispers that this all had to do with their tour manager and possibly some mild undertones from Ian Gillan. Glenn Hughes, at least, seemed to mention, how there was a lot of people's names that were being missed. Rod Evans, Nick Simper, Tommy Bolin wasn't even mentioned. And yeah, fine, he was only in the last album, but he was part of the sound. He was a member. I'm sorry, I'm one of these people that if the group is getting inducted, every member that was in the band that recorded should be in there. If you were on a damn record, even if it was a 45, you were part of the legacy of that band. Boom, you need to be in. I don't give a shit if there's 3 or 4 members of a band, or like the Dead, like almost 20 members over their lifetime. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. Trust me, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame can afford it. They're just, this whole picky-choosy thing is a bunch of bullshit. I'm sorry if I'm swearing a lot today, but, just the whole thing gets me mad. It really does. Because there's a lot of bands that still haven't been in there that need to be in there. Monkees, Moody's, Paul Revere and the Raiders are a few. You know what I'm talking about. So the whole Deep Purple fiasco, that was kind of ridiculous. Although it was a cool picture seeing Ian Gillan, Glenn Hughes, and David Coverdale. Coverdale, I guess, announced shortly after that he's retiring in 2017. I heard his voice isn't that good anymore. Well, if you feel you gotta bow out, you gotta bow out. Then to go on to Chicago. One of my favorite, because I'm from that area, but still one of my favorite Chicago bands of all time. In my opinion, from the first album to Terry Kath's accidental death in '78, that was their time period. But the first 3 or 4 albums are stellar. But basically everything from that time frame up to Kath's death, it was like, in my opinion, the cream of the crop. I'm not knocking Cetera. I mean, they got them, through Cetera, they got the pop hits, didn't they? Through Chicago 16 and 17. I'm led to believe, and if I'm wrong, tell me in the comments, that Cetera was pushed out, was what I was told. He wanted to have a solo album and still be able to be in the band, and I'm led to believe that it was Robert Lamb and a handful of other members that said, So, which is sad because, I think they could have done a couple more records that way. And then I did read Danny Seraphine's book. What a drummer. What a drummer. I still think, Danny, you're an excellent drummer. I'm going to post this video, hopefully, to your site. Because I want everybody to know how hell of a musician you are. Seriously. I heard you and Bill Champlain are going out on the road together, which is cool. And I'm glad that you were able to get back and do the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing. And I haven't seen it on YouTube yet, but I heard it's like you never missed a beat. Like you never left. Good for you. Seriously, sir. Good for you. I just wish they would have been able to clear up the whole Cetera thing. I'm hearing different things that between Robert Lamb and Peter Cetera, so I don't know who to believe, so I'm not going to point fingers. It ain't my job to point fingers, right? But to me, the highlight, other than Seraphine being back in Chicago for that night, was Cheap Trick getting fully back together again for the first time since 2010. The whole Bunny Carlos thing, I'm not, I don't know what to believe. I've heard different things that it was between Robin Zander and Bunny Carlos. And part of it had to do with a Las Vegas residency that the band did because they were doing the complete Sgt. Pepper live in their sets. But, you know, like I said, I wasn't there, so I can't point fingers on that one. It's just what I've read. I did read the new Rolling Stone that's out this week. Ramones are on the cover on that one. Cheap Trick is in there for an interview. They pretty much interviewed all the members. So I was kind of happy about that. I do like the new album, Bang Zoom Crazy Hello. Hope I got that title right. I've heard several songs off of that, and I really like it. I do. There's a lot of people that went off, and they're like, well, it's not Cheap Trick without Bunny. It's not complete Cheap Trick without Bunny. I'm not going to lie. I do like this album, though. Dax Nielsen just drums different. Dax is a nice guy. I met him, you know, last time I mean, this was almost 10 years ago. If I remember correctly right, it was Miles Nielsen and Dax Nielsen were in a band called Harmony Riley in the Rockford area, and I got to see them play in Poplar Grove, Illinois, and I got to have a drink with them. Very nice people. So real quick, I want to show you what little I do have, Cheap Trick memorabilia anyway. I do have a lot of their albums. I don't have every one of them. I'm still looking for certain ones, but I've loved them since way back. Not since the beginning. I'm not going to lie to you about that. I don't honestly think that they were on my radar until maybe the Heaven Tonight album in '79. Yeah, Budokan. I was slightly late to the Budokan parade. I didn't even know about Budokan till after Heaven Tonight came out. So yeah, so '79, about when I was 12 is when I finally figured out who they were. This piece here, I think I showed you before, but I'm going to show it to you again. This, of course, is the 1980 album Dream Police, signed by Robin Zander. I had the pleasure to meet him briefly in 2000, it's either 2004 or 2005. Of course, this is a gatefold. But this is probably, truthfully, my favorite album of the old classic Trick. I mean, you know, you're talking, of course, Dream Police, Way of the World, House is Rockin', Gonna Raise Hell, Voices, I Know What I Want. I love this album, seriously. It's just to me, this was up there. But so, and then what was it? I'll admit this though. That night, Bunny was the first one I bumped into. I think it was 2005. That's right. Bunny was the first one I went up to. I was the only one that went up to him, and he was getting ready to go in his car, and you know, listen, it sounded like there was an emergency that was happening. This was at Davis Park in Rockford, Illinois, outside joint. That was the night that Alice Cooper opened. It was Alice Cooper and Cheap Trick. And Bunny was a little crabby, I'll admit, you know, on that night to me. But it seemed like he was in a hurry about something. So, you know, I didn't say anything. I just said I'm sorry and backed off. Or else I would have had half the band sign that one. But Robin was pretty cool. I was the only one that noticed him. I caught him actually half sneaking off. It was kind of funny. He went to go see, his daughter was in a band. For the life of me, I can't remember the band name. And I just happened to, back when I wasn't so fat, I was able to actually keep up with them. And I'll admit, I was kind of a bad person. I threw the guilt card down on Robin. And I said, well, you know, it was nice to see you for 2 seconds anyway. I wasn't an ass about it. I just threw that out like that. And he stops for a second. He just did that. He just stops for a second. And he turns around and he went like this. So I'm like, I hurried my ass up. And he had a beer in his hand. So I held his beer. He's got the album and he's signing it. And he goes, now don't put any drugs in my beer. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I don't do drugs anyway, which is the truth. And he signs it for me. And I said, my favorite album cover, truthfully. And he goes, you know what? It's mine too. He goes, he said that they had fun doing that sessions that day. And that's pretty much all he said, and I thanked him, and I left him alone, you know, so he could go to his daughter's gig. Let's see. Also, I know you can't see this really well, but in 1994, if I remember correctly, Cheap Trick, of course, put out a greatest hits on Epic, or should I say Epic put out a greatest hits on Cheap Trick. At this time, they had the bonus track Magical Mystery Tour, which I cannot remember what album that was supposed to be on, because it was supposed to be on something, but it was left over, and so, but I didn't have so much vinyl at the time. I mean, I did and I didn't. But in 2004, Cheap Trick and their family, okay, so we're talking Rick's kids at the time with Harmony Riley and Robin Zander's daughter, all their bands played before Cheap Trick did. I got there way early. Me and my roommate Pam at the time, we got there way early. They just opened up the show. It was originally, it looked like it was going to rain. And it was kind of funny because I saw the stage and there were people on the stage and they were noodling around. Well, I thought it was roadies testing the equipment. No. It was Rick Nielsen at first. He tuned his guitars. He like kept bringing out different ones. There was a half semi trailer. Maybe a U-Haul truck, like a big U-Haul truck. And he could walk in there and take the guitars out. They were already on stands because I took a peek. I'll tell you why in a second. I took a peek and everything was there. And it was just incredible. And of course he brought out the 5-neck. When he brought that 5-neck out, I was like a little kid. And I found a hole in the fence because originally I was in GA, okay? General admission, open seating. You brought your lawn chairs and everything. And so the thing is that me and Pam found a hole in the fence. And we were the only ones that managed to find that hole for some reason. Snuck in, and we were at the lip of the stage. Seriously, before the show, we were at the lip of the stage, and Rick was tuning, and he saw us. And I asked him, you know, and I was nervous. I don't know why, but I was. And I asked him if he could sign this for me, which he did. And he also threw me one of his picks. He likes throwing picks. So Pam and I each got one of these. And then shortly afterwards, after he got done, Bunny Carlos came out and practiced. Well, I didn't know he had headphones on. Or, well, actually, they were like, he had little plug stoppers, you know. And so he didn't realize I was talking to him. He's like, hang on a minute. And he pulls out the stoppers, and I started laughing. And we talked a little bit, too. I talked to Rick for actually a minute or two as well. Told him that the truth that he was one of the, you know, his music, their music, was what helped me get through high school, honestly. The Beatles, Monkees, Trick, Aerosmith, things like that helped me get through high school. He couldn't believe it at first, till I told him, like, look, you know, I knew the older stuff, but, you know, one-on-one, all the way to standing on the